Hello, everyone. Welcome to MMA at Midnight. I'm your host, Shant Yeretzian. In this week's episode, we're going to preview UFC 226. Stipe Miocic, he's defending his heavyweight title against Daniel Cormier. The co-main event was canceled. It was supposed to be Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega, but the new co-main event is Francis Ngannou taking on Derek Lewis. So it's still a stacked card, a lot of good fights. I'm sure you guys have heard about the Max Holloway news and following what's going on with him and his health. So we'll stay tuned for that, see what unfolds with that. But right now, the main event, Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier, and the co-main event is Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. Let's get started with the main event first. Main event, we have Stipe taking on Daniel Cormier. They both last fought in January in Boston, defending their titles. Stipe defended his title against Francis Ngannou in a really impressive performance. He survived that first round with Francis swinging hard, throwing those bombs. Stipe did a really good job. He did a good job sticking to his strategy. Daniel Cormier beat Volkan Ozdemir in an impressive performance that night in Boston as well. So it's going to be nice to see Daniel step up back to heavyweight, where he was successful in the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, to take on Stipe. I'm leaning towards Cormier in this fight. Stipe's a great champ. He's got he's really good with his strategy depending on what opponent he has. But I think Cormier is going to do really well. The weigh-ins this morning, Cormier actually weighed in heavier than Stipe. So I'm not sure if that's a good sign or a bad sign, but I don't think size is going to be too much of an issue. Cormier's used to beating up those big guys like he did in the Strikeforce Grand Prix, like Barnett, Bigfoot Silva. He's used to being in there with those giants. So I don't think it's going to phase Cormier. I think he's going to do really well in this fight. But Stipe always has a shot. He always comes out with a smart game plan. Let's see if he has the right game plan for DC. Let's move on to the co-main event. We have Francis Ngannou taking on Derek Lewis. We just said Ngannou's coming off that loss to Stipe. His cardio was a huge issue in that fight. He gassed pretty much before the first round was even over. He threw those heavy bombs, headhunting, and he ended up gassing out. This time around, he actually looks a little smaller. He's not as bulky. He's not looking as big as he did before, and I think that's going to help with his cardio. So let's see how he does against Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, his last fight, he won by KO over Marcin Tybura. But Francis Ngannou is not Marcin Tybura. So if Derek Lewis wants to beat Ngannou, he's got to fight smart. He's got to be really confident in there. He can't just let Ngannou walk all over him. Derek Lewis, he can take beating. He's very durable, and for a big dude, man, he surprised me with his cardio in some of his fights. Even though he'll gas, he still kind of pushes through it. He's gassed. He's not putting 100% anymore, but he still finds a way to push through to the end of the fight. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that fight. I'm leaning more towards Ngannou getting a knockout, but Derek Lewis has surprised me before when I was counting him out. So we'll see what happens in that fight. In the next fight, we have Michael Chiesa taking on Anthony Pettis. Michael Chiesa looked really bad at the weigh-ins today. He actually missed weight. He said this was going to be his last fight at 155. So I take it this weight cut wasn't good, and he's probably had some bad weight cuts in the past that even though he made weight, they probably were very difficult to get to that point. So he's going to be probably moving up after this fight. He was supposed to fight back when the incident with Conor McGregor happened with 223 on the bus, where he threw Conor through the dolly through the window, and the broken glass cut Michael Chiesa, and he was pulled off that card. So he was never able to compete on that card. But before that, he did fight Kevin Lee, which he lost. And Anthony Pettis is also coming off a loss. He's coming off that submission loss to Dustin Poirier. So both these guys need wins in a stacked division. Even if Chiesa decides to move up to 170, he doesn't want to be moving up there with a 2-fight losing streak. So this is a very important fight for both these guys. They're both top 155ers. It's going to be an exciting fight, and I'm looking forward to it. The next fight, we have Gokhan Saki taking on Khalil Roundtree. Longtime fan of Gokhan Saki. I've always loved K1 kickboxing. I've been watching it since before I got into MMA. He's a sick K1 striker. Let's see if Khalil Roundtree is going to use his wrestling and his ground game, or if he's going to stand and bang. We know Khalil likes to trade punches, but I think that'll be a huge mistake if he trades with Gokhan. Just being the high-level kickboxer that he is, I think it would be a mistake. He should try and use his size, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, get that fight to the ground, try and submit or ground and pound Gokhan. But I'm leaning towards Gokhan Saki in this one. His punching power is very powerful, and he's the way his style of striking. It's hard to close the distance on him. He likes that in close style. You get in close on him, you're gonna be eating uppercuts, hooks. So I'm looking forward to that fight. I'm leaning towards Gokhan to win that. In the next fight, we have Uriah Hall taking on Boroshinya, Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa, undefeated. You guys remember in his last fight, he destroyed Johnny Hendricks. It was a really impressive performance. It was a step up in competition for him. He's letting everyone know he was the real deal. We need like these young guys at 185 when 185 is starting to age. You know, you got the champ Robert Whittaker, who's still young, even though he's been in the UFC for a while. He's not that old compared or have as much mileage as some of the other guys in the division. But we need guys like Paulo Costa. We need these young, hungry guys, undefeated, 11-0. I think he can do really well against Uriah Hall. It all depends on what Uriah Hall shows up. Boroshinya has been pretty consistent in his fights. Uriah Hall is one thing that he isn't as consistent. You know, some days he just looks like the best in the world. Other days you wonder why he hasn't been cut yet. It's hard. I like Uriah Hall. He's a good dude. I like his striking style, but it's all the mental game with him. If he can come in there mentally strong, confident, he could walk through Boroshinya, but I don't see it happening. You know, I think Uriah Hall, he really needs to step up because he was on a 3-fight losing streak before his last fight. He ended up winning his last fight against Krzysztof Jotko, but before that win, yeah, he had 3-fight losing streak. So let's see if he can keep that momentum going, get another win, and if he does it against an undefeated young up-and-comer who's hungry, who's been tearing through guys, that'll be really good for Uriah Hall to get back up in the top of the division. That'll be a good fight, so stay tuned. We got Mike Perry versus Paul Felder. This is going to be a good matchup. Paul Felder moving up to 170 to fight Mike Perry. Mike Perry's on a 2-fight losing streak. You know, we all saw him when he first came in. There was a lot of hype around him. You know, he likes to throw down, but he's got a lot of holes in his games. He's really reckless. When you watch him, you kind of be like, you know, like maybe he doesn't belong on the UFC level, you know? And I think Paul Felder being a big 155er, I think this is going to be an easy fight for Felder. Felder's so well-rounded and such a good striker, ground guy. I think he's going to walk right through Mike Perry. It being a step up in weight division, I don't think that even matters. I think there's so many holes in Mike Perry's game. Paul Felder's going to expose this dude. I picked Paul Felder to just walk through Mike Perry in this one. You know, they might throw down for a bit, but that's just what Mike Perry does. He turns the fight into a brawl. You know, he always has that puncher's chance, but, you know, I don't see it happening. So, great fights, guys. There's a lot of good fights on the undercard, too. We got Rafael Assunção taking on Rob Font. That's a great fight. Rob Font coming off that KO of Thomas Almeida in Boston in January. Rafael Assunção's on a 3-fight winning streak. This is Rafael Assunção's 13th UFC fight. He's one of the most underrated guys in the UFC. He's only lost once in the past 7 years, and it was to TJ Dillashaw. So there's no shame in losing to TJ, champ, you know, of the division. Really underrated fighter, Rafael Assunção. I know that division is kind of locked up with Cody, Dominic, and TJ. But Rafael Assunção is right there behind all those guys. You know, if he can get an impressive win over Rob Font, who's been climbing the ranks, who's shown us a lot of good performances in the UFC, I think you can't deny Rafael Assunção a shot at one of those top guys. So another great fight on the card. Check it out, guys. Be doing a post-fight special, so stay tuned for that. The website, there's going to be some changes coming, some different content, going to be doing some different things. I know there hasn't been updates lately, just working on that. I'm also training. I'm hoping to have my first fight by the end of the year. So stay tuned. Keep up with the website. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video, guys. And we'll see you for the post-fight special. Enjoy the fights.